Hello, I'm Bradley J. And as you may know, I like to go to cool places and do cool things and bring you with me. And today I'm inviting you to a thing called the Stellafane Amateur Telescope Makers Convention in Springfield, Vermont. Wait till you see this. Let's go. First, let me get your attention by showing you a photo taken through one of the homemade telescopes made by one of the folks at this convention. His name is Doug Arian. He's an astronomer and a physicist, and he's going to give us a little bit of background on this event.
Welcome to Stellafane. My name is Doug Arian. I'm a member of the club that has put on this convention ever since the early 1920s. In fact, next year's our centenary. This is where telescope making began in the United States. It was an area of precision machining, and so there were groups that got together and started making telescopes. So one of the folks donated this piece of land. They built a clubhouse, and with leftover paint, the clubhouse ended up pink, and it has remained pink ever since. All of us over the years have built all sorts of telescopes and many different kinds of optics, many kinds of mechanical things. And so really the founding of American astronomy science began here. It's here because Springfield, Vermont, because of the river, was a center for precision machining. It's where it kind of started here. There was power and they started making precision items. And so it just turned out to be suitable for those couple of men to just start making telescopes. Somebody brought the idea, Russell Porter brought the idea of saying, telescopes are expensive, but we can make them by hand. Let's kind of do that. And so it's kind of coincidental that it's in Springfield, Vermont because of that. But the fact that we're up on a hill in absolutely gorgeous country, of course, and that tradition has continued and telescopes come here. So in a typical year, we get over 1,000 people. In years past, we got more, but now we get about 1,000 to 1,200 people. And people come from all over the world with the telescopes that they've designed and built. And there's a competition for the quality of the optics, the mechanical design, the craftsmanship in it, and the innovation. There's a whole award just for the innovation in building telescopes. It's really cool.
Tell me a little bit about this structure behind you.
So the founder of all this, Russell Porter, was a very eclectic guy. He was a tremendous artist. He did graphic arts at a level that nobody else has ever done before or since. A brilliant engineer. He was one of the people who contributed a lot of ideas to the building of the 200-inch Hale telescope. And he had also been an Arctic explorer and had been marooned with a whole group of others for close to a year in very cold temperatures. And he said, I like telescopes, I like observing, but I hate being cold. So this building that you see behind me, it's called the Porter Turret Telescope, was designed to have the optics that collect the light outside, but then the eyepiece and observing is from inside. So inside, we're now inside the Porter Turret Telescope, and it's set up for solar observing at the moment. So on this screen to your right, you can actually see a projected image of the sun. But this entire turret assembly rotates to follow the sky and to point at different objects, and the whole telescope assembly itself rotates to look in different directions, north and south.
Let's check in with one of our amateur telescope makers.
Okay, my name is Scott Reeves. I'm from suburbs of New York City. I belong to the Rockland Astronomy Club. I've got two scopes up here at our Stellafane competition. This one is a 12.5-inch f6 that has not entered this year but did win second place 3 years ago. And then over there I have my entry this year. It's a travel scope, a 10.5-inch travel scope. And the feature of this is everything breaks down and goes into a carry-on suitcase.
Here we have Sarah, who is an engineer and by all accounts a genius, who has built a really good telescope. Can you talk about it a little bit?
All right, yeah. So this telescope is entirely CNC'd and 3D printed, at least as far as parts that you can CNC and 3D print. Obviously, aluminum tubes were bought. The mirror, the mirror and the mirror cell, the focuser, and the secondary assembly were all gifts from a friend of my father's. So this telescope was really just designed around all of those parts. I had started out by 3D modeling all of the parts that I was given and assigning them their actual masses in Fusion 360 so that I could, in the end, balance the telescope. And then I designed these I call them cells. I don't really know what a better term for them would be, but each of these golden cells is a separately defined unit in Fusion 360.
What's the material?
This is made out of Baltic birch, CNC'd.
Seems that Baltic birch is the thing for telescopes.
I have been told by certain sources, my dad, that Baltic birch is the best wood to build pretty much anything you want to, that you're going to cover up, unless you like want it to be super pretty, like walnut or something. If it's mechanical, you're going to paint it and you want it to last forever. He said you always build it out of Baltic birch.
So do you have the gearing to follow the target?
I had originally planned to build an equatorial platform for this. I thought it would be a cool thing, but then from a separate individual, I was gifted a old equatorial platform for like a refractor telescope and a camera for astrophotography. So I kind of set that aside. You will notice the mounting holes here. There are 2 mounting holes down here, 2 up here. The reason I did that is if I were to mount up here instead of these, I would then have the proper back focus to use this focuser with a DSLR. So I did originally intend to have it track objects for photography, but I never really got around to it before I was given a easier platform to do that
Right,
with.
I see you have a mount here for the DLSR.
So this is just a
size
general
thing,
focuser,
right?
yeah.
Can't you just screw a camera right in there?
There's an adapter for it.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. I guess they were right. You are a genius.
Well, I mean, there's one other thing that's before you go. So since this was all designed in CAD, pretty much every parameter of this, down to like truss length, truss angles, the size of these cells, where they're placed, is all based on equations that I gave the software Fusion 360. If this is currently configured for a 10-inch mirror with a 6.1 something f6.1 something, I could give it parameters, and I do have pictures of this on the computer. I could give it parameters for, say, a 12-inch mirror, and say I want it to be an f4, and it will recalculate the entire model and give me all the plans and parts optimized for a 12-inch f4 telescope.
In the right ratios and everything.
You would have to go through and rebalance. Like, obviously the mirror is going to weigh more because it's much bigger, but once you find the balance point, you can finalize that, and it will give you the truss lengths, and the 3D printed parts will automatically give you the correct angles and everything.
Can you step in the sun a little bit so we can see you better?
Sorry.
Okay. And so with all this skill and all this knowledge, what are your big goals in the best of all possible worlds in 20 years? What will you be doing?
I haven't the slightest
20
idea.
years, I know, seems like a long time for someone your age. But if all goes well, you will continue and grow. And where do you think you'll be?
Well, I definitely plan on going back to school in the next couple years. I left after I got my bachelor's because I didn't quite know what I wanted to continue studying. So hopefully in the next few years I figure that out and continue on. I really like material science. I want to do more with additive manufacturing in all of its forms. I think it's really interesting how you can go in and layer by layer engineer layer line and directions to make parts stronger in certain dimensions, and just
What's additive manufacturing? Is that 3D printing?
3D printing in all its forms. So this is FDM, so filament deposition manufacturing. So that's plastics. You also have like SLS, which is your resin printing. No, SLS is metal, selective laser sintering. Sorry.
It's okay.
Sorry. The acronyms get me, the three-letter acronyms. But I would like to go into the more metal side, just to see. There's a lot of interesting properties that would take.
So you would study
I could talk on
metallurgy?
forever
Is that what you would
about
be?
that. Yeah.
You could go to MIT and.
Love to go to MIT.
They have. I used to do radio there, and every day I'd walk by through the Walker Building past the metallurgy department, and that was pretty exciting.
Yeah, I'd love to go to a big school. I just no idea what I would study.
Well, you know what? With a telescope like this, I bet you can get in. Take care. Thanks. Now let's check back with Doug, because he's going to show us a telescope he brought.
This is the telescope I make that's easily drivable. You know, it fits in a car very comfortably, so I bring it up. And I'm pretty famous, as you might have seen with some of the people here, for building my telescopes around bowling balls. They're a wonderful way to build a telescope. They're inexpensive. They're very stable. You just need a little cup of some kind to hold it. But what I've also done is build a platform underneath so that this actually follows the sky, because as you know, things rise and then set, and this allows you to have the telescope automatically follow things. So that's, if you wish, my sort of grand improvement in telescope building. I'm not the first person to use bowling balls. Many people have done that before, but I do think I'm the first one who was able to implement a tracking system. And I make all the parts of the telescope, whether it's the mount, the assembly that focuses the eyepieces, the finder telescopes, all the things in here. That to me is a big part of the fun, is to be able to design and manufacture all the components of a telescope. And the views are absolutely beautiful when you get to use it.
They sure are. I have 3 images that Doug took with his equipment, and this is the Cygnus Loop, also called the Veil Nebula, and it is an expanding shell from a supernova, which is an exploded massive star, which heats up a shockwave as it runs through space. This is a large star-forming region in Orion. It's known as the Orion Nebula, and it's visible to the naked eye as the sword just below Orion's belt. And this is Mars, taken at a point where it is relatively close to Earth. Now let's talk with a guy named Fred Higgins. He's a science teacher and an attendee at the Stellafane Amateur Telescope Makers Convention. Why do you like to come up, and are you going to bring your students someday? And if so, what could they learn?
Oh, yes. In fact, I've been teaching many places throughout the years, and I'm trying to think here. I think it's actually 40 years ago my wife and I first came here. And in that year, I did have a group of students that I chaperoned here, and I haven't taken them up here yet. But there's all these telescopes. If you have any interest in astronomy, all of these telescopes that are being judged here up on the hill are amateur, are made from scratch for the most part. It's just fascinating. It's the way you do astronomy, by talking to other astronomers. The other fun thing about being here, everybody here wants to talk about their telescope. You must come here and ask questions, and they will be answered. It's really great.
What a cool event. Thanks so much to Doug Arian for turning us on to this event. I may actually go up next year and stay over and look through the telescopes at night. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe and click on the bell to get notified of future posts, and, well, feel free to comment. Bye for now, and remember, per ardua ad astra.